I never expected to find my boss, the woman who made my life hell for 3 years, sobbing on my doorstep at 2 a.m. with mascara streaking down her rich brown face. But what happened the next morning would change both our lives forever. Jonas Vale stared at his phone, his thumb hovering over the decline button. It was the 5th call from his boss in the last 20 minutes. Normally, he would have ignored it without a second thought, especially on a Friday night when he finally had some precious time with his daughter. But something felt different about tonight. "Daddy, who keeps calling?" 8-year-old Ariana asked, her dark eyes curious as she looked up from her coloring book spread across their small apartment's coffee table. Her thick, natural curls were pulled back in 2 puffs, and she had a smudge of purple crayon on her warm brown cheek. "It's just work, sweetie," Jonas replied, forcing a smile as he ran his hand over his closely cropped hair. "Nothing important." The phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a call, but a text message. "Please help. I'm in trouble." Jonas sighed deeply. Clara Hawthorne, his boss at Hawthorne Creative Group, no relation to her, as she often pointedly reminded everyone, was notorious for her cold demeanor and unreasonable demands. The elegant black woman with her designer suits and perfectly straightened hair had made his life miserable since he'd started working there 3 years ago, especially after he became a single dad when his wife walked out. The late nights, the weekend work, the constant criticism, all while he struggled to raise Ariana alone. Yet something about that text message stirred something deep within him. Maybe it was the simple "please" that Clara had never used before. "Mrs. Patel is coming over to watch you for a little bit," Jonas told Ariana, already dialing their neighbor. "Daddy needs to help someone." "Even though they're mean to you?" Ariana asked with the innocent directness of childhood. Jonas paused, kneeling down to meet his daughter's eyes. "Especially then, baby girl. Grandma always said we help people not because of who they are, but because of who we are." 30 minutes later, Jonas pulled up outside the Ember Room, an upscale bar in the business district where many of their clients like to close deals. Through the window, he could see Clara sitting alone at the bar, her normally perfect posture slumped as she argued with the bartender, a young black man who appeared to be holding her car keys. When Jonas entered, the scene became clearer. Clara was clearly intoxicated, her designer blouse stained with what looked like red wine, her usually immaculate hair falling out of its sleek bun, revealing the natural texture she normally kept pressed straight. "I'm fine to drive," she was insisting, her words slurring slightly. "Do you know who I am? I could buy this entire establishment." "Ma'am, I've called you a cab." The bartender, whose name tag read Deshawn, replied firmly. "I'm not giving you back your keys." "Jonas!" Clara exclaimed when she spotted him, her dark brown face lighting up with unexpected relief. "Tell this person who I am." The bartender looked at Jonas with raised eyebrows, a silent question passing between 2 black men who both recognized the complexity of the situation. "She's my boss," Jonas admitted quietly. "I'll take her home. I've got her." Deshawn nodded slowly, studying Jonas's face for a moment before sliding the keys across the bar. "You're a good man. Make sure she gets home safe." What Jonas didn't know, as he helped Clara to his car, was that across the street, one of their biggest clients was watching the entire scene unfold, a client who had just been considering pulling their multi-million-dollar account after Clara had been particularly harsh during their meeting earlier that day. And what Clara didn't know was that Jonas had just sacrificed the one night that month he had planned to finish the storybook he was writing for Ariana's upcoming birthday, a story about a little black girl who could paint her dreams into reality. "Why are you helping me?" Clara mumbled as Jonas buckled her seatbelt, her dark eyes unfocused. "I'm terrible to you." Jonas paused, considering the question. In the dim light of his car, he could see the vulnerability in her face, the smudged mascara tracking down her cheeks, so different from the impeccable woman who commanded their office with an iron fist. Because it's the right thing to do, he finally said, and because everyone deserves a second chance. That's what my grandmother taught me before she passed. Little did Jonas know that those words would echo in Clara's mind long after the alcohol had worn off, setting in motion events that would test both their characters in ways neither could imagine. The drive to Clara's upscale penthouse apartment was mostly silent, broken only by her occasional directions and a few incoherent mumbles. When they arrived, Jonas realized he would need to help her inside. She could barely stand, let alone walk. "Keys?" he asked gently. Clara fumbled through her designer purse. He recognized it as one of those expensive brands his ex-wife used to covet, before producing a key card. As they made their way through the lobby, the night doorman, an older black gentleman with silver-streaked hair, gave them a knowing look that made Jonas's cheeks burn with embarrassment. "It's not what you think," Jonas started to explain, but the doorman just nodded with a wise smile. "Son, I've been working this desk for 20 years. I've seen it all. You're doing a kindness." That's all that matters. Clara's apartment was exactly what Jonas had imagined: minimalist, expensive, and cold. Everything was white, black, or chrome, without a single personal photo or memento visible. It felt more like a hotel suite than a home, lacking the warmth of the apartment he shared with Ariana, with its colorful artwork and family photographs. "Bathroom," Clara mumbled urgently. Jonas helped her to what he hoped was the right door, then retreated to the kitchen to get her some water. As he searched through perfectly organized cabinets for a glass, he noticed a single photograph magnetized to the refrigerator. Clara, much younger, her hair in long braids, standing with an older black woman who shared her features, the same high cheekbones, the same warm undertones in their skin. Both were smiling in a way he had never seen his boss smile, genuine and unguarded. "That's my mother," Clara said, startling him. She had emerged from the bathroom looking marginally better, though still unsteady. Her makeup was mostly wiped off now, revealing the natural beauty of her features. "She died 5 years ago today." The simple statement hung in the air between them, suddenly explaining everything about this night. "I'm sorry," Jonas said sincerely, handing her the water. "I lost my grandmother when I was young. She raised me after my parents passed. Those anniversaries never get easier." Clara took the glass, their fingers brushing momentarily. "Why are you being kind to me? I've been nothing but cruel to you." Before Jonas could answer, Clara's phone rang. She glanced at it, and her face paled. "It's Gregory Harlan," she whispered, referring to the CEO of their largest client. "Don't answer," Jonas advised. "Not in your condition." But Clara was already accepting the call, switching instantly to a professional tone that barely betrayed her intoxication. "Gregory, what a pleasant surprise." Jonas could hear the angry voice on the other end of the line. Something about unprofessional behavior and reconsidering their partnership. Clara's face crumpled as she realized what was happening. "Gregory, please, I can explain." Jonas surprised himself by gently taking the phone from her hand. "Mr. Harlan, this is Jonas Vale. I apologize for the interruption, but Ms. Hawthorne has just received some devastating personal news and was trying to process it privately. I'm helping her get home safely. Perhaps we could schedule a meeting on Monday to discuss any concerns you might have." There was a long pause before Gregory responded, his tone noticeably softer. Jonas continued the conversation, his natural empathy and communication skills, the same ones that made him excellent at his job despite being overlooked, somehow managing to not only smooth things over, but also secure a tentative agreement for an expanded campaign. When he hung up, Clara was staring at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. "You saved my career," she said quietly, her voice breaking. "After everything I've done to make your life difficult." Jonas shrugged. "Like I said, everyone deserves a second chance." As he helped Clara to her bedroom and ensured she had water and aspirin for the morning, Jonas wondered if she would even remember any of this tomorrow. In his experience, people like Clara Hawthorne didn't change overnight, and they certainly didn't acknowledge moments of weakness. "I should go," he said, turning to leave. "My daughter is waiting." "Your daughter," Clara repeated, her voice small. "Ariana, right? The one whose recital I wouldn't let you attend last month?" Jonas was surprised she remembered. "Yes." "I'm sorry, Jonas," Clara whispered, already drifting toward sleep. "I'm so sorry." Jonas didn't respond. He'd heard drunk apologies before. They rarely meant anything in the light of day. As he drove home through the quiet city streets, exhaustion settling into his bones, Jonas prepared himself for Monday morning, when Clara would undoubtedly pretend none of this had ever happened. That's how these things always went. The powerful never acknowledged their moments of vulnerability to those beneath them. What Jonas couldn't possibly know as he quietly thanked Mrs. Patel and checked on his sleeping daughter, pausing to adjust Ariana's bonnet and kiss her forehead, was that Clara Hawthorne lay awake in her expensive bed, staring at the ceiling, making a decision that would transform both their lives. Monday morning arrived with the usual chaos of a single parent's household: spilled cereal, missing homework, and a last-minute scramble to catch the school bus. By the time Jonas arrived at the office, he was already exhausted, and the day hadn't even properly begun. He braced himself as he approached Clara's office, expecting either cold dismissal or outright hostility. What he didn't expect was to find her waiting by his desk with 2 cups of coffee. "Good morning, Jonas," she said, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. She looked impeccable again, her hair back in its sleek style, her makeup flawless on her brown skin, but something in her eyes was different. "I got you coffee. Black with 1 sugar, right?" Jonas stared at her, momentarily speechless. In 3 years, Clara had never once remembered how he took his coffee, let alone brought him any. "Thank you," he managed, accepting the cup cautiously, as if it might be some kind of trap. "I'd like to speak with you in my office when you have a moment," she continued, her usual commanding tone softened into something almost like a request. As Jonas followed her, he noticed the office was buzzing with confused whispers. Their co-worker Tamika raised her eyebrows at him in a silent question. Clara Hawthorne bringing coffee to an employee? Something was definitely wrong. Once inside her office, Clara closed the door and turned to face him. She took a deep breath, her manicured hands clasped in front of her. "I remember everything about Friday night," she said without preamble. "I want you to know that." Jonas shifted uncomfortably. "It's really not necessary to—" "It is necessary," Clara interrupted. "You helped me when you had every reason not to. You protected my reputation with Gregory Harlan. You were kind when I've been nothing but cruel to you." She moved to her desk and picked up a folder. "I've been reviewing your personnel file all weekend. You've consistently been one of our top performers, despite the fact that I've denied your requests for flexible hours, overlooked you for promotion twice, and generally made your life difficult." Jonas didn't know what to say. This wasn't the Clara Hawthorne he knew. "My behavior has been inexcusable," she continued, her dark eyes meeting his directly. "Professionally and personally. I've been taking my own pain out on others, especially you, and it stops today." She handed him the folder. Inside was paperwork for a promotion to senior creative director, a position 2 levels above his current role. "This comes with a 40% salary increase and flexible working hours," Clara explained. "You'll report directly to me, but you'll have autonomy over your projects and your schedule. You'll never have to miss another one of Ariana's events because of this job." Jonas stared at the papers in disbelief. "Why?" Clara's professional facade cracked slightly. "Because you deserve it. Because I've been punishing you for having what I lost. A family that needs you. A daughter who looks at you like you hung the moon." For the first time, Jonas saw Clara as a person, rather than just his tyrannical boss. "Your mother," he said softly. Clara nodded, turning to look out the window at the city skyline. "She was everything to me. When she died, I threw myself into work because it was the only thing that made sense. I resented anyone who had priorities outside this office." She turned back to face him. "Especially you, with your daughter and your constant reminders that some things are more important than quarterly reports." Jonas thought about all the times he'd had to choose between his daughter's needs and Clara's demands. All the school events missed, the bedtime stories cut short, the weekends sacrificed. "I don't expect you to forgive me," Clara said, "but I want you to know that I'm not pretending Friday night didn't happen. It was a wake-up call I desperately needed." Before Jonas could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from Ariana's school. His heart sank as he read it. "Ariana's sick," he said, already gathering his things. "I need to go pick her up." In the past, this would have earned him a cutting remark about priorities and commitment. Instead, Clara nodded immediately. "Of course, take the rest of the day. Is there anything you need?" Jonas paused at the door, still trying to process this new reality. "No, I think we'll be okay." "Jonas," Clara called as he was leaving. "I meant what I said. Things are going to be different around here." As Jonas rushed to his daughter's school, he wondered if this change of heart would last. People made promises in moments of clarity or gratitude, but they rarely followed through when the moment passed. What he didn't know was that Clara Hawthorne had spent the entire weekend confronting truths she'd been running from for years, and that his simple act of kindness had cracked open a door she'd kept firmly shut since her mother's death. 3 days later, Jonas was working from home while Ariana recovered from a nasty flu when his doorbell rang. Opening it revealed Clara standing awkwardly in the hallway of his modest apartment building, holding a large gift bag and what appeared to be a container of soup. She looked different outside the office. Her hair was in its natural curly state, and she wore jeans and a simple sweater instead of her usual power suits. "I hope I'm not intruding," she said, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. "I just wanted to check on Ariana. And you." Jonas invited her in, watching with fascination as the woman who commanded boardrooms with iron authority now stood nervously in his cluttered living room, taking in the family photos on the walls, pictures of him and Ariana, his grandmother, aunts and uncles at family reunions. "I brought chicken soup," Clara explained, holding out the container. "It's my mother's recipe. And some books I thought Ariana might enjoy while she's recovering." Before Jonas could respond, Ariana appeared in the hallway, wrapped in her favorite blanket, her natural hair in twists. "Daddy, who's here?" she asked, her voice hoarse from her sore throat. "This is Ms. Hawthorne," Jonas explained. "My boss." Ariana's eyes widened. "The dragon lady?" Jonas wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "Ariana!" To his astonishment, Clara laughed, a genuine warm sound he'd never heard from her before. "Yes, the dragon lady," she confirmed, kneeling down to Ariana's level, "though I'm trying very hard not to breathe fire anymore." Ariana studied her with the frank curiosity only children possess. "Daddy says you're very smart, but you don't know how to be happy." Jonas closed his eyes in mortification. "Ariana, that's not exactly—" "Your daddy is right," Clara interrupted gently, her expression soft. "I forgot how to be happy for a while, but I'm learning again." The simple honesty of this exchange shifted something in the atmosphere. As Clara sat with Ariana, listening to the little girl explain the plot of her favorite book about a young black girl who becomes a scientist, Jonas observed a side of his boss he never knew existed. Later, after Ariana had fallen asleep on the couch and Clara had helped Jonas clean up the dinner dishes, another surreal experience, they sat at his small kitchen table with cups of tea. "Thank you for coming," Jonas said. It meant a lot to Ariana. Clara traced the rim of her cup with one finger, her nails natural and unpolished today. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said Friday night. About second chances." She looked up at him, vulnerability clear in her dark eyes. "Do you think people can really change, Jonas? Or do we just become better at hiding who we really are?" The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither was ready to fully explore. "I think," Jonas said carefully, "that who we really are isn't fixed. We're shaped by our experiences, our choices, our pain, but we can choose to be shaped differently." Clara nodded slowly. "My mother used to say something similar. Before she got sick, she was the kindest person I knew. She volunteered at the church, always had an open door for anyone who needed help. Watching her suffer changed me. I built walls to protect myself and didn't realize I was trapping myself inside them." Jonas thought about his own walls, constructed after his wife left him and Ariana, how he'd poured everything into being a good father and a reliable employee, never allowing himself to want anything more. "Maybe we both have some walls that need to come down," he suggested quietly. The look Clara gave him then, open, unguarded, hopeful, made something shift in his chest. What neither of them realized in that moment was that their story was just beginning. That Clara's transformation wasn't just about becoming a better boss, but about rediscovering the person she'd been before grief hardened her heart. That Jonas's compassion had not only earned him a promotion, but had opened a door to possibilities he'd long since stopped imagining for himself. In the months that followed, the office watched in amazement as Clara Hawthorne became almost unrecognizable, still brilliant and demanding, but also fair, supportive, and occasionally even kind. They whispered about what could have possibly changed her, creating elaborate theories that never came close to the simple truth. The truth was that on a Friday night, when she was at her lowest, Clara had experienced something she'd forgotten existed: unconditional kindness from someone who had every reason to turn his back on her. And in that moment, she'd glimpsed a version of herself she thought had died with her mother. As for Jonas, he found himself thriving both professionally and personally. With his new position and flexible schedule, he never missed another of Ariana's school events. The storybook he'd been writing for her birthday was not only finished, but, with Clara's encouragement and connections, was being considered by a publisher who specialized in diverse children's literature. And if anyone noticed that the fearsome Clara Hawthorne now regularly joined Jonas and Ariana for weekend outings to museums, parks, and ice cream shops, they were wise enough not to comment on it directly, at least not where either of them could hear. 6 months after that fateful Friday night, Jonas and Clara sat on a park bench, watching Ariana chase butterflies in the late spring sunshine, her laughter ringing out across the grass. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if you hadn't answered my call that night?" Clara asked, her natural curls moving gently in the breeze. Jonas considered the question. "Sometimes. But then I remember something my grandmother used to say. The most important moments in our lives often don't announce themselves. They just happen, and we only recognize them in retrospect." Clara smiled, watching Ariana, who had now befriended another little black girl and was showing her how to make daisy chains. "Your grandmother sounds like she was a wise woman." "She was," Jonas agreed. "She also would have liked you, once you stopped being the dragon lady." Clara laughed, a sound that had become wonderfully familiar over the past months. "I'm not sure I've completely shed the scales yet." "No," Jonas admitted with a grin, "but they're more like glitter now than armor." As they sat in comfortable silence, Jonas found himself thinking about the journey they'd taken, from adversaries to colleagues to friends to whatever they were becoming now, something neither of them had put into words yet, but that hung in the air between them during quiet moments like this one. What Jonas didn't know was that Clara had spent the previous night staring at her mother's photograph, having a long overdue conversation with the woman who had taught her about love before pain made her forget. "I think I'm ready," Clara said suddenly, turning to face him. "Ready for what?" Jonas asked, though something in his expression suggested he already knew. "Ready to stop being afraid," she replied. "Ready to admit that what happened that night wasn't just about you saving my job or me becoming a better boss. It was about two people who had built walls finding a door in them." Jonas's heart raced as he looked into her eyes that no longer held the cold calculation he'd known for years, but instead shone with something warm and genuine. "Clara," he began, but she shook her head. "Let me finish. I've spent my entire adult life convinced that vulnerability was weakness, that needing others was a flaw to be corrected. I pushed away anyone who might see past my defenses because I couldn't bear the thought of losing someone I cared about again." She took a deep breath. "But watching you with Ariana, seeing how your love for her makes you stronger, not weaker, it's changed everything I thought I knew." Jonas reached for her hand, entwining their fingers, both their hands the same warm brown tones. "For what it's worth, you've changed everything for us too. Ariana used to ask why I always looked tired. Now she asks when Ms. Clara is coming over next." Clara's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "And what about you, Jonas? What do you ask?" The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. In the distance, Ariana's laughter floated on the spring breeze. "I ask," Jonas said softly, "if you might consider being part of our story for more than just this chapter." Clara's answer came not in words, but in the way she leaned forward, closing the distance between them with a kiss that felt like both an ending and a beginning. 1 year to the day after that fateful Friday night, Jonas stood in the doorway of what had once been Clara's cold, impersonal apartment, now transformed with family photographs, Ariana's artwork, and the comfortable chaos of a home filled with love. Clara was in the kitchen attempting to recreate her mother's lasagna recipe, while Ariana helped by sprinkling far too much cheese on top. Neither of them had noticed him watching them yet, and Jonas took a moment to savor the scene. If someone had told him 2 years ago that his tyrannical boss would become the woman who made his daughter giggle uncontrollably and who looked at him as if he'd hung the moon, he would have thought they were delusional. Yet here they were, building something beautiful from the most unlikely beginning. "Are you going to stand there all night? Or are you going to help us with this culinary disaster?" Clara called out, finally spotting him, her natural hair pulled back in a loose bun. Jonas joined them in the kitchen, dropping a kiss on Ariana's head and another on Clara's lips, just enjoying the view. Later that night, after Ariana had gone to bed and they sat together on the balcony overlooking the city lights, Clara handed him a small wrapped package. "What's this?" Jonas asked, surprised. "Open it and see," Clara replied, an unusual nervousness in her voice. Inside was a first-edition copy of the children's book his grandmother had read to him countless times, the one he'd mentioned once, months ago in passing. "How did you find this?" he asked, running his fingers reverently over the cover. "I have my ways," Clara said with a small smile. "Read the inscription." Jonas opened the book to find Clara's elegant handwriting on the first page, "To Jonas and Ariana. Some people save others without realizing they're saving themselves in the process. Thank you for the second chance I didn't know I needed. I promise to spend the rest of my life making sure neither of us ever forgets what matters most. All my love, Clara." Below the inscription was a small velvet box. Jonas looked up at Clara, his heart pounding. "I'm not very good at this," Clara admitted, taking the box from him with slightly trembling hands. "I've never done it before, but I know that I want to be part of your story, yours and Ariana's, for all the chapters to come." She opened the box to reveal a simple but elegant ring. "I'm not asking to replace anyone or to change what you and Ariana have built together. I'm asking if there might be room for me in your family, officially, Permanently. Completely. Jonas looked at the woman before him, the woman who had once made his work life miserable, who had transformed herself through sheer determination and love, who now looked at him with such vulnerable hope and knew there was only one possible answer. "There has always been room for you," he said, pulling her into his arms. "We were just waiting for you to find your way home." As they held each other under the stars, both thinking of the unlikely path that had brought them to this moment, Jonas couldn't help but marvel at how a single act of kindness on a dark night had changed everything. Sometimes the most important crossroads in our lives don't announce themselves with fanfare. Sometimes they arrive as inconvenient phone calls on Friday nights, as moments of compassion when resentment would be easier, as second chances given without expectation of return. And sometimes, if we're brave enough to answer those calls, to offer that compassion, to give those second chances, we find ourselves exactly where we're meant to be, with people who were always meant to be part of our story.